The Kytherian homeworld of Zelthara had known peace for over 2 millennia. Their crystalline cities stretched across continents like delicate works of art, connected by flowing bridges that seemed to dance in the perpetual twilight of their binary star system. The Kytherians themselves were beings of grace and intellect, standing nearly 3 meters tall, with translucent skin that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns reflecting their emotions. But peace had come to an end 6 months ago, when the first Ravager ships appeared at the edge of their system. The Ravagers were everything the Kytherians were not: brutal, militaristic, and driven by an insatiable hunger for conquest. Their black warships moved like predators through space, and they had already consumed 3 star systems in their relentless march across the galaxy. Ambassador Lyrian stood in the High Council chamber, her skin patterns flickering with deep purple waves of desperation. Around her, the 12 members of the Kytherian ruling council displayed their own emotions in cascading colors of fear and uncertainty. "The outer defense platforms fell yesterday," she reported, her melodic voice heavy with sorrow. "The Ravagers will reach our inner system within days." Chancellor Vex, eldest of the council, pulsed with pale gold streaks of ancient wisdom. "Our philosophers have always believed that violence begets only more violence," he said softly. "But perhaps our ideals were meant for a universe more peaceful than the one we inhabit." The other council members rippled with agreement, their skin patterns synchronizing in the way that marked deep consensus among their people. "There is one possibility," Lyrian continued, her patterns shifting to the bright silver of hope mixed with uncertainty. "Our deep space observers have detected transmissions from a species called humans. They appear to be skilled in warfare, and their signals suggest they value concepts of alliance and mutual defense." She paused, watching the council's reaction. "We could ask for their help." The chamber fell silent except for the gentle humming of their bioluminescent technology. The idea of asking strangers for military aid went against everything Kytherian culture represented. They were artists, philosophers, and scientists. They built their cities to enhance natural beauty and spent their long lives in pursuit of knowledge and artistic expression. War was as foreign to them as breathing underwater. But the alternative was extinction. Chancellor Vex's patterns deepened to the dark blue of profound decision. "Prepare the message," he said. "If these humans truly value alliance, perhaps they will understand our desperate situation." Within hours, every transmission array on Zelthara was focused on the distant Sol system, sending humanity's first contact with the Kytherian people. The message was a work of art in itself, combining mathematical proofs with visual representations of Kytherian culture and their current crisis. It showed their peaceful cities, their dedication to knowledge and beauty, and the terrible threat of the approaching Ravager fleet. The transmission ended with a simple plea: "We seek alliance against those who would destroy beauty and knowledge. Will you stand with us in this dark hour?" Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen was pulling a double shift at Earth's deep space communication array when the alien transmission arrived. Unlike the garbled distress call in your example, this message was sophisticated and clear. The universal translator protocols that humanity had developed after first contact with the Altarians worked perfectly with the Kytherian mathematical frameworks. Chen stared at her screen in amazement as the alien message unfolded. The visuals showed cities that looked like they were carved from living crystal, beings of ethereal beauty creating art that defied human understanding, and then the dark contrast of the approaching enemy fleet. The technical data was even more sobering. The Ravagers outnumbered the Kytherians 50-1 and possessed weapons that could crack planets. "Ma'am, you need to see this immediately," Chen called to her supervisor, Major Rodriguez. Within minutes, the message was racing up the chain of command. But unlike the tragic misunderstanding in your example, this time humanity understood exactly what was being asked of them. The Kytherians weren't a threat. They were potential allies facing annihilation. The message reached Admiral Marcus Webb at Terra Defense Command within 6 hours. Webb was a veteran of the Centauri conflicts and understood the strategic implications immediately. An advanced, peaceful species being overrun by genocidal conquerors was exactly the kind of situation that demanded human intervention. But more than that, the Kytherian message had touched something deeper in human nature. Webb called an emergency session of the Defense Council. The holographic display in the war room showed the Kytherian system, with red markers indicating the approaching Ravager fleet and blue markers showing the positions of the remaining Catharian defense platforms. "Gentlemen, ladies," Webb began, "we have our first real test of the Terra Alliance Charter." The Charter, signed after humanity's first encounter with galactic civilization, committed Earth to defending peaceful species against unprovoked aggression. It had been controversial when drafted, with many arguing that humanity should focus on its own expansion rather than playing galactic police. But moments like this were exactly why it had been written. General Patricia Stone, head of the Marine Corps, leaned forward. "What's our tactical assessment?" Webb pulled up detailed scans that human intelligence had been conducting on Ravager forces for months. "The Ravagers are technologically inferior to us in most areas, but they have numbers. Their standard strategy is overwhelming force, applied without restraint. They don't take prisoners, and they don't negotiate." "How long do the Catharians have?" asked Admiral Chen from Naval Operations. "Based on current fleet movements, maybe 72 hours before the main assault begins," Webb replied. "But here's the thing, the Catharians have already evacuated their civilians to underground shelters. They're not asking us to save their cities, they're asking us to save their entire species." The weight of that responsibility settled over the room. This wasn't a border skirmish or a trade dispute. This was genocide prevention on an interstellar scale. General Stone was the first to speak. "We have 2 battle groups currently in the Vega sector. That's 48 hours hard burn to the Catharian system if we push the engines." "What about diplomatic solutions?" asked Colonel Martinez from Intelligence. Webb's expression darkened. "The Ravagers don't do diplomacy. We've been monitoring their communications for years. They see every other species as either prey or obstacles. The Catharians offered to surrender 6 months ago in exchange for civilian evacuation rights. The Ravagers responded by destroying their orbital habitats." Admiral Chen studied the tactical display. "Battle Group 7 has the Dreadnought Thermopylae and 5 heavy cruisers. Battle Group 3 has the carrier Wellington and a full Marine complement. If we combine them, we're talking about committing 60% of our mobile fleet to defend aliens we've never met," interrupted General Martinez from Strategic Planning. Webb nodded. "Yes, we are. The question is, what kind of species do we want to be known as in this galaxy? The one that stands by while peaceful civilizations are butchered, or the one that shows up when good people call for help?" The vote was closer than it should have been, but humanity chose to answer the call. Battle Groups 7 and 3 received their orders within the hour. Captain Julia Reeves of the Dreadnought. Thermopylae was reviewing star charts when the priority transmission arrived. She had expected another patrol mission or perhaps escort duty for a diplomatic convoy. She had not expected to be told that humanity was about to fight its first interstellar war. "All hands, battle stations," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We are proceeding to the Catharian system at maximum burn. This is not a drill." The Thermopylae was the pride of the human fleet, a kilometer-long monster of steel and composite armor carrying enough firepower to level continents. Its escort consisted of 5 Aegis-class heavy cruisers, each one a formidable warship in its own right. Battle Group 7 was built for one purpose: winning fights against impossible odds. Meanwhile, Battle Group 3 was built for a different kind of warfare. The carrier Wellington launched swarms of fighters and carried 3 battalions of Colonial Marines, humanity's elite rapid deployment force. If Battle Group 7 was humanity's hammer, Battle Group 3 was its scalpel, capable of precision strikes and ground operations. As the human fleets raced through hyperspace toward the Catharian system, the situation on Zelthara was growing desperate. The Ravager Advanced Fleet had arrived and was systematically destroying every Catharian installation in the outer system. Monitoring stations, research facilities, and mining operations vanished under concentrated bombardment. Ambassador Lyrian stood in the emergency command center deep beneath the capital city of Harmonisi. The chamber was filled with Catharian military advisors, though military was a generous term for beings who had never fought a real war. Their skin patterns flickered with the deep indigo of profound fear, mixed with the faint gold of desperate hope. "Any response from the humans?" Chancellor Vex asked, his own patterns barely visible in his exhaustion. Lyrian checked her console one more time. Long-range sensors detect massive hyperspace disturbances in the outer system. Multiple large objects are approaching at high speed. She paused, her patterns brightening slightly. The energy signatures matched the theoretical profiles for human warships. Above them, the first Ravager ships were entering orbit around Zelthara itself. The enemy fleet was a nightmare of black metal and weapon ports, designed to inspire terror as much as to wage war. Assault ships began launching landing craft toward the planet's surface, while bombardment vessels prepared to glass the cities from orbit. That's when Battle Group 7 dropped out of hyperspace. The human ships materialized in space like avenging angels, their hulls gleaming with the blue-white glow of their defensive shields. The Thermopylae took point, its massive form dwarfing even the largest Ravager vessels. Captain Reeves opened a channel to the enemy fleet. "Attention, Ravager forces," she broadcast on all frequencies. "You are engaging in unprovoked aggression against a peaceful species under the protection of the Terran Alliance. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The response was predictable. The Ravagers opened fire with everything they had. Their plasma cannons and particle beams lanced across space toward the human formation. But the humans were ready. The Aegis-class cruisers moved into defensive formation, their point defense systems creating a wall of intercepting fire that destroyed incoming projectiles before they could reach their targets. The Thermopylae's shields flared as heavier weapons struck them, but the massive Dreadnought barely slowed. Instead, it began to return fire. The Thermopylae's main guns were magnetic accelerator cannons that fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. When the first salvo struck the lead Ravager battleship, the enemy vessel simply ceased to exist, transformed into an expanding cloud of superheated plasma. The Kytherian observers watching from the planet's surface had never seen such devastating firepower deployed so precisely. But the Ravagers had numbers on their side. For every ship the humans destroyed, 2 more moved to take its place. The battle quickly became a running fight as the human formation moved deeper into the system, drawing the enemy fleet away from the planet while inflicting maximum casualties. Captain Reeves coordinated the attack with the cold precision of a chess master, but even she could see they were outnumbered. That's when Battle Group 3 arrived. The carrier Wellington dropped out of hyperspace behind the Ravager fleet, immediately launching hundreds of fighter craft while its escort ships moved to engage the enemy rearguard. Colonel Marcus Thompson, commanding the Marine contingent, watched the battle from the Wellington's Combat Information Center and prepared his forces for what was coming next. "Colonel, we're detecting massive Ravager troop movements on the planet's surface," reported his intelligence officer. "They've landed 3 full divisions and are advancing on the Catherian shelter complexes." Thompson nodded grimly. The space battle was only half the fight. If the Ravagers reached the civilian shelters, it would be a massacre. "Prep the drop pods," he ordered. "We're going in hot." The human Marines were veterans of a dozen colonial conflicts, but none had prepared them for what they found on Zelthara. The Catherian cities were works of art, but they were also completely defenseless. The Ravagers were advancing through the crystal streets like a plague, destroying everything beautiful they encountered not for strategic value, but for the sheer joy of destruction. Thompson's 1st Battalion landed directly in the path of the Ravager advance. The Marines deployed from their drop pods in perfect formation, their powered armor gleaming in the strange twilight of the binary star system. They carried weapons designed for human conflicts, but adapted for the heavier gravity and thicker atmosphere of alien worlds. The first engagement was brutal and one-sided. The Ravagers had expected to face Catherian philosophers with improvised weapons. Instead, they met human Marines with military-grade pulse rifles, rocket launchers, and tactical nuclear charges. The enemy advance stopped dead as superior human firepower carved through their ranks. But Thompson knew they couldn't hold forever. His 3 battalions were vastly outnumbered, and more Ravager troops were landing every minute. "Wellington, this is ground team actual," he radioed to the carrier. "We need immediate fire support on coordinates I'm transmitting. Paint the targets and light them up." The carrier's bombardment systems locked on to the Ravager landing zones and began methodically destroying enemy reinforcements before they could deploy. In space, the battle was reaching its climax. Captain Reeves had positioned the Thermopylae between the Ravager fleet and the planet, using her ship's massive bulk to shield the evacuation operations below. But her vessel was taking tremendous damage, and her crew was fighting fires on half the decks. "Engineering, how much longer can we maintain shields?" she asked over the intercom. "Maybe 10 minutes at current power drain," came the reply. "After that, we're fighting with armor only." Reeves looked at the tactical display showing dozens of enemy ships still in the fight. 10 minutes wasn't going to be enough. That's when her communications officer received an unexpected transmission from the planet's surface. "Human vessels. This is Ambassador Lyrian of the Catharian High Council," the melodic alien voice said through the universal translators. "Your sacrifice for our people will be remembered for all time. But there is something you must know. Our cities were built over ancient shield generators, left by a precursor race. We never learned to activate them because we never needed them. But your presence has given us hope, and hope has given us courage." On the planet's surface, Chancellor Vex stood before a crystalline control panel that hadn't been touched in over 10,000 years. The ancient technology was so advanced that even the Caitharians barely understood it. But desperation had driven them to try. "If we can power these systems with our city's energy grid," he said to the technicians around him, "we might be able to create a planetary defense screen." The risk was enormous. If the attempt failed, they would drain their city's power just as the Ravagers were closing in on the civilian shelters. But if it succeeded, Vex placed his hands on the control interface, and immediately his skin patterns began to glow brighter than anyone had ever seen. The ancient machinery responded to his touch, drawing power from the crystalline cities and channeling it into systems older than Catharian civilization. In space, Captain Reeves watched in amazement as a shimmering energy field began to form around the planet. The precursor shields weren't just defensive barriers. They were selective filters that could distinguish between friendly and hostile intent. The Ravager weapons fire simply passed through harmlessly, while their ships found themselves unable to approach the planet's surface. But the shields had another effect no one had anticipated. The ancient technology began scanning the minds of every being in the system, reading their intentions and their nature. The Ravagers, with their minds full of hatred and destruction, found themselves increasingly disoriented as the shields rejected their very presence. The humans, fighting to protect innocent life, found their weapons functioning with impossible precision. The tide of battle turned in minutes. The Ravager fleet, suddenly cut off from their ground forces and facing human vessels that seemed to anticipate their every move, began to break apart. Captain Reeves pressed her advantage, ordering the combined human fleet to advance on the retreating enemy. "All ships, pursue and destroy. We end this here and now." Colonel Thompson, watching from the planet's surface as the last Ravager ground forces surrendered or fled, opened a channel to Ambassador Lyrian. "Ma'am, your people's courage saved the day as much as our firepower did. Those shields were the key to everything." Lyrian's patterns shifted to the brilliant gold of deep gratitude, mixed with something humans were only beginning to understand: the birth of true friendship between species. The battle for Zelthara was over within 6 hours of the human fleet's arrival. But the aftermath would shape galactic politics for generations to come. The Catharians, who had never known violence, had learned that sometimes peace must be defended with strength. The humans, who had come expecting a military operation, had discovered allies whose wisdom and ancient knowledge complemented their own tactical abilities. In the weeks that followed, joint human-Catharian teams began studying the precursor technology, while Caitharian philosophers worked with human strategists to develop new approaches to galactic security. The Ravagers, driven back to their own territory, found themselves facing not just human military might, but a growing alliance of species who refused to tolerate genocide. Ambassador Lyrian, now serving as the first Caitharian representative to Earth, stood in the Terran Alliance Assembly Hall as humanity formally welcomed her people as full members. Her skin patterns showed the deep silver of profound change, not just for her own species, but for the galaxy itself. "We called out for allies," she said in her address to the Assembly, "and you brought us something more precious than ships and soldiers. You brought us hope." Captain Reeves, promoted to Admiral after the battle, established the first joint human-Caitharian naval base in the former Ravager neutral zone. The facility served as both a military installation and a research center, where human engineering worked alongside Catherian science to create technologies that neither species could have developed alone. The Thermopylae, repaired and upgraded with Catherian defensive systems, became the flagship of the new interspecies defense fleet. Its crew now included both human officers and Catherian advisors. Their different approaches to problem solving, creating solutions that were more effective than either could have achieved separately. But perhaps the most significant change was cultural. The Catherians, who had spent millennia avoiding conflict, discovered that there were causes worth fighting for. They began training military forces for the first time in their history, not to conquer or destroy, but to protect other peaceful species who might face what they had faced. The humans, meanwhile, learned that their role in the galaxy was not just as warriors, but as protectors of civilizations that chose beauty over brutality. The image of human marines standing guard over crystal cities became a symbol throughout known space strength in service of peace, power used to protect rather than dominate. Colonel Thompson, now General Thompson and commander of the Interspecies Marine Corps, established training programs where human tactical expertise was combined with Catherian strategic thinking. The result was a new kind of military force, one that could fight with human ferocity when necessary, but which approached each conflict with Catherian wisdom about the long-term consequences of violence. The Ravagers, meanwhile, found their expansion halted by the growing alliance. Species that had once cowered before their fleets now stood firm, knowing that help would come. The genocide that had consumed 3 star systems was the last the Ravagers would be allowed to commit. They retreated to their core worlds, surrounded by neighbors who would no longer tolerate their aggression. 5 years after the Battle of Zelthara, Ambassador Lyrian stood once again before the Catherian High Council, but now the chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species. The alliance that had begun with a desperate plea for help had grown into the largest peaceful coalition in galactic history. Her skin patterns glowed with the warm gold of deep satisfaction. "We sought allies against darkness," she reported to the assembly, "and we found something greater. We found family. The humans taught us that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. And we have taught them that victory is not measured in enemies defeated, but in civilizations preserved." Chancellor Vex, now ancient even by Catherian standards, pulsed with the deep blue of profound wisdom. "The precursor shields still protect our world," he said, "but they are no longer the source of our security. Our security comes from the knowledge that we are not alone, that there are others in this galaxy who will stand with us against the darkness." Captain Shen, now commanding the research vessel Harmony on a joint exploration mission, sent regular reports back to Earth about the wonders they were discovering together. Catherian artistic sensibilities combined with human curiosity had led to breakthroughs in everything from faster-than-light communication to planetary terraforming. But the greatest discovery was not technological. It was the realization that the galaxy was not divided between the strong and the weak, the conquerors and the conquered. There was a third path, the path of alliance, where different species contributed their unique strengths to create something greater than any could achieve alone. The memorial on Zelthara bore names in dozens of languages, honoring those who had died in the battle that changed everything. But it was not just a monument to the fallen, it was a promise to the future. Never again would peaceful civilizations face extinction alone. Never again would genocide go unanswered. As Ambassador Lyrian concluded her report, her skin patterns shifted to the brilliant white of absolute certainty. "We called out for allies in our darkest hour," she said, "and the universe answered. Not with the allies we expected, but with the allies we needed. They came with dreadnoughts and shock troops, but they brought us something infinitely more valuable. They brought us hope and the knowledge that goodness, protected by strength, can triumph over evil." The alliance endured, grew stronger with each passing year, and became the foundation for a new age of galactic civilization. And it all began with a simple truth that humanity had carried from their ancient homeworld to the stars. When good people call for help, you answer. No matter the cost, no matter the odds, you answer. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the stars. If you enjoyed this story of humanity's first interstellar alliance, in the bonds forged in the fires of war, please show your support by hitting that like button. It really helps us reach more science fiction fans like yourself. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest HFY stories and sci-fi adventures. We have amazing tales coming up about humanity's encounters with ancient civilizations, mysterious alien technologies, and the ongoing saga of our species' place among the stars. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of the Catharian-Human Alliance? Would you like to see more stories about their joint adventures? Your feedback helps us create the content you want to see. And if you really love this story, please share it with fellow sci-fi enthusiasts. Word of mouth is the best way to help our channel grow and bring these epic tales to more listeners. Until next time, keep looking up at the stars and wondering what adventures await us out there. This has been another HFY story, and we'll see you in the next one.